Have you ever thought about who the worst Death Eater really was? What if it wasn't the most sadistic or ruthless, but the most spineless? In today's video, you'll find out why Lucius Malfoy might be the most disgraceful servant of Voldemort. At first glance, Lucius Malfoy is the perfect aristocrat. Polished manners, expensive robes, an air of superiority. He's powerful, wealthy, and undeniably skilled in magic. Yet behind this flawless exterior lurks a man driven by fear, cowardice, and selfish ambition. Unlike Bellatrix Lestrange, who embraced Voldemort's ideology with fanatical devotion, Lucius never had the courage to fully commit. He talked big, played the part, but when real danger loomed, he scrambled to save himself. Time and time again, he proved that his true allegiance was not to the Dark Lord, but to his own survival. How did he become this way? What happened to him after Voldemort's downfall? Let's take a closer look at Lucius Malfoy's path, from privilege to disgrace. Born into one of the wealthiest pure-blood families, Lucius grew up believing in his own superiority. His father, Abraxas Malfoy, was rumoured to have been involved in political conspiracies, setting the stage for Lucius's obsession with power. At Hogwarts, he was an excellent student, a model Slytherin, and even became a prefect. But despite the popular assumption, he was never particularly close to Severus Snape. Snape was 6 years younger, and Lucius had little reason to associate with him. After school, Lucius eagerly joined Voldemort's ranks, drawn to the Dark Lord's power. He believed aligning himself with the strongest wizard of the age would secure his place in the magical world. Unlike other Death Eaters who openly reveled in cruelty, Lucius operated in the shadows. He used his wealth and influence to manipulate people rather than fight on the battlefield. Yet when Voldemort fell, Lucius didn't hesitate to switch sides. He claimed he had been under the Imperious curse, avoiding Azkaban and continuing his life of luxury. He married Narcissa Black, fathered Draco, and focused on expanding his political influence, bribing ministry officials rather than engaging in open warfare. This is where Lucius became even more despicable than the Death Eaters, who at least remained loyal. Bellatrix never wavered. Fenrir Greyback never hid his savagery, but Lucius? He played both sides, never willing to get his hands dirty unless he was sure he could escape the consequences. His obsession with power led him to meddle in Hogwarts affairs, targeting Dumbledore and pushing his own agenda. He secretly slipped Tom Riddle's diary to Ginny Weasley, setting off a chain of events that endangered the entire school. His plan failed, and when he was caught, he was disgracefully removed from Hogwarts' Board of Governors. When Voldemort returned, Lucius found himself trapped. He had spent years denying his involvement with the Dark Lord, yet now he had no choice but to serve him again. He was given a critical mission: retrieve the prophecy from the Department of Mysteries. He failed spectacularly. Captured and imprisoned in Azkaban, he lost everything: his wealth, his status, and, most importantly, Voldemort's trust. When the Dark Lord freed his captured followers, Lucius returned home a broken man. His once magnificent manor became a Death Eater headquarters, and he was no longer a powerful leader, but a disgraced servant. Voldemort humiliated him at every turn, taking his wand, stripping him of his dignity, and treating him like a worthless pawn. By the time of the Battle of Hogwarts, Lucius had no fight left in him. While others stood their ground, he abandoned the battlefield to search for Draco. His only act of defiance was fleeing, ensuring his family's survival while leaving Voldemort's forces to their doom. This final betrayal spared the Malfoys from Azkaban, but it did not redeem Lucius. Unlike Draco, who eventually grew beyond his family's toxic beliefs, Lucius never truly changed. He remained bitter, clinging to outdated ideas, even resenting the way his grandson was being raised with more tolerance. He lost his power, his influence, and, worst of all, his relevance. In the end, Lucius Malfoy wasn't the most dangerous Death Eater. He wasn't the cruelest, the strongest, or even the most committed. He was something far worse, a man who spent his entire life chasing power, only to be left with nothing. The fall of Voldemort changed everything. The pure-blood families, once the untouchable elite of the wizarding world, found themselves in an unfamiliar position, exposed, scrutinized, and in some cases despised. The Malfoys, once a name that inspired both admiration and fear, became a cautionary tale. No longer the power behind the throne, they were forced to navigate a world where their bloodline no longer secured their status. Draco Malfoy had seen enough of war. He had watched his father crumble under Voldemort's rule, reduced from a proud aristocrat to a trembling servant. He had seen his mother risk everything to lie to the Dark Lord, prioritizing family over loyalty. By the time the Battle of Hogwarts ended, Draco knew one thing: survival meant change. Years later, when asked about his past, he simply stated, "I now see that I was mistaken, but Lucius Malfoy never truly changed." Stripped of influence, humiliated and cast aside, he clung to the remnants of his former beliefs. He resented the world that had forced him to bow, yet he no longer had the strength to fight it. His once proud posture now sagged under the weight of irrelevance. He watched in silent dismay as his grandson Scorpius was raised to see no difference between bloodlines. Other pure-blood families faced the same reckoning. The Parkinsons, who had supported the ideology of blood purity, quickly distanced themselves from the Malfoys, hoping to avoid the same disgrace. Pansy Parkinson, who once sneered at mudbloods, found herself struggling to gain respect in a new Hogwarts. She had tried once to persuade the school to hand over Harry Potter. She never quite recovered from that mistake. The Knots were another story. Unlike the Malfoys, who had the money to buy their way into a quiet existence, Theodore Knott's father was imprisoned, leaving his family name in ruins. Theodore, always more reserved than Draco, had little choice but to forge his own path. He disappeared from the social circles he had once been a part of, avoiding conversations about the past. Not all pure-blood families resisted change. The Longbottoms, though pure-blooded, had long rejected supremacist ideologies. Neville Longbottom became a hero, proving that greatness had nothing to do with lineage. He returned to Hogwarts as a professor, standing as living proof that the world had moved on from blood purity. If the Malfoys and Parkinsons were relics of an old world, Neville was the symbol of the new one. Even among those who held on to their prejudices, open defiance was no longer an option. The Ministry had changed. Kingsley Shacklebolt ensured that blood status would never again dictate one's place in the wizarding world. Laws were rewritten. Corrupt officials who had once favored purebloods found themselves without protection. The old families either adapted or faded into irrelevance. There were whispers, of course. Not everyone was willing to let go of the past. In the dark corners of Knockturn Alley, in the halls of crumbling manors, some still muttered about the good old days. They spoke in hushed tones, dreaming of a time when their names carried weight. But they no longer dared say it aloud. Time moved forward. The children of former Death Eaters walked the halls of Hogwarts, sitting beside the children of Muggle-borns. Some, like Scorpius Malfoy, rejected their inheritance of hatred. Others struggled with it, caught between family expectations and the reality of a world that no longer cared about their bloodline. The pure-blood ideology did not die overnight. It lingered in old traditions, in private conversations, in the way some families still avoided marrying outside their circles. But the world had changed. The war had proven that blood meant nothing compared to courage, loyalty, and the choices one made. And for families like the Malfoys, that truth was the harshest punishment of all.